brought to you by BookTrib, the leading source for book news and reviews. I'm Judy Moreno, one of the editors over here at BookTrib, and I'm so excited to bring you this chat with the lovely Susan Lax. Susan is the author of a new poetry book called A Heart's Landscape. It's a volume that explores the gifts of awareness, encourages the reader to be present in every moment, and offers a path to an attentive heart. She generously shares the truths and inspirations that she's learned from the beauty of the human spirit and the power of nature. Susan is also the cultivator of Morning Inspiration, an email subscription that reaches people around the world and connects them through words of support. She's led spiritual coachings, workshops, and guided meditations, and she's also co-founded a successful shoe company called Neha. There are so many things I can say about Susan, especially since she has so much wisdom in so many areas of life, from personal to professional to inspirational. But that being said, I think I've said enough because we're all here to hear her as she shares some of this amazing wisdom with us. So welcome, Susan, and how are you doing today?
Hi, Judy, and hi to all the listeners. It's truly a privilege to be here, and you're with me in my home right now, so I get to sit nice and cozy on this kind of gray day outside. And I thought I wanted to start with one of my poems in the book, one of my past morning inspirations, because the morning inspiration I sent out today was about my longing to be in nature again. And it's been kind of cold here in New York and rainy and gray. And I haven't been able to take my walks and to connect with nature. And I wanted to share that even in the rain, we can find something good. So I'm going to share one of my poems. Yesterday, a good friend shared her love for the sound of rain, presenting my heart with a new awareness. Curiously waiting with different listening for the next rainfall, nature answered my inquisitiveness. Heavy rain, proclaiming her greatness, greeted me this morning, nurturing nature's children with the gifts of water, creating swishy puddles to jump in, washing away the remnant dust of prior heat wave days, giving space to the tears from above, knocking rapidly on my window, awakening my attentiveness, listening with a newness to the beat of my heart. And this is really what takes my writing to a place of one moment of awareness. One raindrop, one being in the rain and saying, wait, can I see this just a little differently? And as my editor, Gail Hudson, and I hope she's listening, said to me, it changed the way she looked at rain. And that really is what morning inspiration is. And I hope that A Heart's Landscape does, is just allow for each person that sits with it and reads the words in these pages to change a moment of awareness for them.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It was the perfect way to open it up, especially in this time of year and this season. You know, it's January and the holidays are past, and you can feel a sort of sense of grayness, like you said, but
yes,
to find a way to switch the perspective and to actually look forward to the next rain. It's gorgeous. I love it.
Yeah, you know, because I think one of the things that I've learned and that I have, and I don't always succeed, there's never 100% success, but I try to incorporate in my moments is that there is always room for a moment of joy. And I think by training the heart to become an attentive heart and to allow that message, that just one moment of joy. That doesn't mean the entire day is going to be joyous and from now on I'm going to be great and yay, yay, yay. Absolutely not. It just means that from 10 to 10:01, I can feel joy. And I have invited joy into me, or I am aware of that emotion of joy. You know, joy is an emotion. It's not something we can search and find and put in a box and say, okay, now we're taking. It lives within us all the time. We just have to invite it.
I know that that's one of the most important messages to you in your writing and in your works. And was that one of the things that inspired you to write this book? Like, where did the idea come from?
Well, writing the book came from sending out Morning Inspiration. And so I'll share where Morning Inspiration started from.
Yes, please do.
It's a little bit of a spoiler because when you read the book, you get that in the beginning. But to all of you listeners, come join me. I'll share this with you. Probably around 12 and a half, 13 years ago, a very close friend of mine, who I was used to speaking to all the time, became absent from contact with me. And I then found out that she had been touched by cancer and that she did not want to really share that with anyone. She wanted to keep it to her own and go through whatever she was going through in the way that she felt for herself. And I wanted to honor that. However, I missed her and I missed that bond, and I wanted somehow to connect with her. So I decided to send her an email. And in that email, I said to her, I'm going to send you these emails. If you want me to stop, just write me, no more emails. You don't have to answer, and we never have to talk about it. And I started sending her emails at around 6 a.m. because I knew she was a very early riser. And I also knew that when she was going for her treatment, it would be early in the morning. And I thought, I wanted her to read something good. And I started writing to her, never mentioning really cancer or illness, or it was just life and probably a good thing about life. And I thought I wanted my message to her to be is that she was still my friend. She was not cancer. She was not an ill person. She was the same soul she had always been for me. And I never knew if she was reading them or not. And I never spoke to her about it. And then approximately 5 months into writing this every day, I got the flu and I couldn't get up to write to her. And at 7:30, I got a phone call. And immediately I recognized her voice. And she said, "Where is my morning blessing?" And it was in that moment that it went into, and Judy, you and I have spoke to about the drawers in the rooms of our soul. And that was a message that went into one of the drawers in one of my rooms in my soul, was the power our words have. We never know the impact, and we never know where it reaches, who it reaches, and how it inspires. And I continued to write this. And at the same time, I was also working with women that had been touched by cancer, and they heard that I was doing this, that, "Oh, we want this too. What do you mean you're just sending it to her?" And there is where Morning Inspiration was born. So the book, A Heart's Landscape, is something that over the years, many of the people that were receiving Morning Inspiration had said, "Susan, you have to put this in a book so we can always have it."
Mm-hmm.
And, didn't happen. And then COVID came. And COVID allowed for many of us many moments of time that we had never had before. And when we have time, we think. And when we think, wheels get going. Mm-hmm. And a good friend of mine who had published a book, a memoir of his parents' experience in the Holocaust, was sharing that. And all of a sudden, I started asking him questions. And lo and behold, I wrote this book. And Girl Friday Productions helped me write this book. And I'm so grateful for that. And A Heart's Landscape was born.
That's an amazing story. It's such a journey from just sending out a very caring, compassionate email to a friend, and now to have a book full of blessings and poems for the whole world. How did it feel as it started to get to be a bigger and bigger effort? Did it feel like a heavy responsibility, or were you just
Oh,
honored? And
well, great question. How did it feel? I always love going back to visit. How did it feel? Because it
Mhm.
brings again another moment of awareness that perhaps I didn't know then.
Well, because you just did it to make others feel better, to make others feel good.
I thank you for saying that, but I have to add to that. The people that receive this are my inspiration. The people that I meet are the inspiration for my writing. It's not that I just sit there, and these are all my moments. They come from my past moments and my present moments, or conversations, and all these, the human spirit. That's who's in part of this. And I had to take 3,684, I believe, morning inspirations and narrow them down and go through them. And so I went through 12 years of my life, and I visited them. So there were tears, there were laughter, there were longings, there were joyful feelings, sad feelings, grateful feelings. And I saw how much I evolved and how much morning inspiration has evolved, how much my writing has evolved, how much my audience has evolved.
Mhm.
And, in the last 5 years, I took up photography, and that became part of my morning inspirations. And it was a journey. I mean, how many of us get this great gift to go through 12 years of our life almost daily and see, where were you on November 12th in 2013?
Yeah.
And in the process, I've become a savta, a grandmother in Hebrew,
Mhm.
and I've passed the age of 60 and past the age of 50. And it is a true gift to have been done this, but it was hard. It was going through like all your children and going, which one do I love the best? Which one gets to be in there?
I can only
Um,
imagine. That must have been somewhat excruciating. And I bet people ask you a lot, like, "Oh, do you have favorite poems?" And you're saying, "Well, the whole book is my favorites because those are the ones that made it into the book." And,
you know, I got asked that 3 times this week in different interviews. Uh, yes, everything is my favorite. And there are those that didn't make it into the book, but they're still my favorite.
I
They're
like that.
still my favorite because I had my editor help me, because I just couldn't make the decisions. And I sat there at times with 2 or 3 going, wait, I can't leave you out. No, I can't leave you out. And, I have this intimate connection with them. But there are those that are connected to specific souls and spirits that came through my life. And reading them gives me and offers me another moment to reconnect with them. And it makes me smile. And it brings that sense of, yes, I get to talk to you again. So I think part of that is that, and I get to visit past motherhood times. I get to visit my life. I lived in Israel and grew up there mostly. And I get to visit that, because my heart lives in 2 parts of this world, one in Tel Aviv in Israel and one here. And I got to bring them together. And I was able to bring those all and say, wow, this is my story. These moments are part of my story. And I really hope it inspires people to tap into their story and to say, because every story is unique. Every one of the listeners here and in the world and you are inspiring. And all those inspirations, when they connect, have a potential of making this world a better place. And in the end of the day, that's really what I hope for. I hope that when one moment of inspiration brings a moment to tap into one's joy, it becomes contagious. And I know that word in these days with COVID to use contagious, but in this moment, I use contagious as a positive thing, because we don't know if that moment of joy will then affect our next moment. And if our next moment is affected, maybe who we talk to, it's affected. And I one of the things I start when I work with someone, I'll say to them, just close your eyes and smile. For absolutely no reason, smile. And it is I have amazing stories what happens after that. And it could be in those stages when it is of the most challenging times. But that smile does something physically, emotionally, spiritually, that even here when we're speaking, I see you smiling, I'm saying that and that's a connection. And in the end of the day, connection between us is what may offer my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, a better world. In my both worlds, in my business world, we really strive through our business and our shoe company to make it a better world. And that's where they meet. That story of me, as someone reminded me, you have these two sides, but they're all make up your story, Susan. So I want to give this message out to all that are listening here. If you can take one moment a day to close your eyes and just smile. Just smile. And perhaps another moment during the day will take that smile further. So that's kind of where this all connects.
Well, I can't stop smiling hearing this from you. I know where my smile's coming from. Have you gotten responses like that from people, that the moments have been contagious and they've seen some of it through reading your poems?
Oh, yes. And the bigger inspirations, or not the bigger, the most inspirational moments for me in that has to do with writing Morning Inspiration and this book is the responses I hear from people, is hearing from them something that I never realized as I started this. We never know the power of a positive inspiration, right? Of a positive feeling, of a positive thought. And so many people have said to me and written to me, it's just made me remember. It made me remember to tap into my gratitude. Mm-hmm. It allowed me to say, hey, stop for a second. Just stop, pause. It's okay to pause. And pausing doesn't mean we have to stop working, we have to stop doing. Pausing just really means pause for that brief second. And I like to use the visual for those of us that drive, when we're in the car. And I remember as a younger mother and running through all the automatic pilot of driving a child here or picking them up here, it's sitting in the car in front of a red light used to be the best thing, because I would just pause. And even though I know I had a rush to pick, I had one daughter who I was picking up from a school, another daughter from another school, and driving to the barn or to a basketball game. It was just, I actually enjoyed sitting at that red light and going, wow. And I use that a lot in my mind. Sometimes when I'm rushing, I say, Susan, remember that car when you sat in front of the red light and you really enjoyed it, and now you're not in that car? Just remind yourself to do that. So I think that's the biggest message I get from people, is that they remind themselves to pause. And that pause can take you to the most amazing places.
I love that so much because, again, it's a perspective altering way to see an occasion that sometimes causes people to get a little cranky, having to stop at the red lights when they're driving. Everyone just wants to go and they never want to take the time to pause. But for you to say, no, actually, a pause is a perfect opportunity for you to get in touch with your heart and to step back and enjoy something. I think that's a great lesson right there.
Yeah, yeah. I really believe that all these lessons are within all of us. They're all there.
Mhm.
Everybody has these, all these messages are always there for us to get. But just by pausing, we get to choose whatever message our heart needs at that time. And that was the message I got. There could be another message for someone that stops at a red, it doesn't mean that it has to be identical to my message, because
Right.
no two souls are identical, right? And that's what makes us unique. So my messages aren't more important than your messages. They're just the messages of your heart, and they're there for you. Yeah.
Well, when looking back over so many years of your life and choosing the poems and compiling the book, what were some of the other messages that you saw as common threads throughout your poems that you'd now say are themes of the book? Or because obviously finding moments of joy is one of them. What are some others?
Laughter.
Oh,
Laughter has always, I always say a good belly laugh is better than any medicine I know for the soul. And laughter has always been something that was there for me. And in my own family of origin, I do remember we would sit around the table on Friday nights with my parents. And there was this word that my father would say, peachy. It's not really funny, but I can recall, see, you're laughing, which I love. It wasn't really a funny word, but for somehow our family, we would all laugh just hearing that word.
mhm.
And when I recall that, I think that was one of the most happiest moments I can remember, and sitting around with my family is just laughing because. And in my relationships today, there's really no one in my life anymore that I can't share a good laugh with. And that is where I think I am so full of gratitude, because my friends, my family, my colleagues, we all share laughter. And I think there's a poem in my book about a very funny experience that happened, and about being able to laugh at ourselves. Because when we share belly laughs, and it kind of allows us to laugh at ourselves in the most interesting of situations, as opposed to bringing stress to a level. And I share in the book also a time when I was grieving, and laughter really allowed me to just be and continue to live. It was like you can go, let laughter in that moment. And that's one of my messages to those people I work with that are either going through grief of their own, or anticipating grief, or moving on to the next realm, is allow a moment of laughter. Allow a moment of laughter.
That's so true. And it's so necessary. And I know that you're also a spiritual coach, along with all these other things. And what are some of the other messages and advice that you give when you're doing your spiritual coaching?
I actually don't give advice.
Oh, okay.
I think I really try to help whoever is reaching out to me to find their own answers within their heart. I just provide different tools that they can do it. And I give them different elements or different words. And I really even sometimes share situations where I've been in, but I wouldn't call it advice, because I think, especially in grief, a woman I spoke to 2 weeks ago said something to me, and she said, the worst thing was when people said to her, read this and do the 5 stages of grief. And are you there yet? And just like there are no two souls, there are like no two grieving is alike. And so advice, it really wouldn't be the word, it would be, I'm just there to help you perhaps tap into what already you have. Yeah.
That is so refreshing. That's really beautiful. And it comes from a place of great self-awareness and just awareness as a spiritual coach, to be able to know that and think, I'm not going to tell people how to feel. I'm going to give them the tools to figure out what they need themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And many times I don't have to offer a tool. We just talk about something and it comes to them. Because again, what works for someone doesn't work for somebody else. Right. And so it's, the beauty. When I first started doing this, I had made this toolbox, and I would bring it to my workshops and I would say, this is my toolbox. And in here, there are lots of tools that I use for all the things we just discussed. And I would have them decorate. I would bring things that they could decorate their own toolbox. And then on different cards, they would write the things that they came up with or that they heard from someone else, and they would then make their own toolbox to have.
Oh, I love that.
And I still have mine. I have to tell you, it's even nice little notes that people have written me, I put in that toolbox. And sometimes at a moment when maybe a longing for someone, or a moment of confusion or sadness, or a COVID moment of 360 days in lockdown, I went to the toolbox and I closed my eyes and I opened it, and whoa, look what came out. So yeah, I believe that toolboxes, either physical or in the heart and in the soul, are a wonderful thing to have.
I'm gonna have to do that. I'm inspired. You're an inspiring person just to be around. And unfortunately, I can't even believe it, but we're running low on time. So is there any last thing that you'd like to share before I draw this to a close?
I do. I thought I would read again, maybe I shouldn't. Someone said, then, people will know, but I want to read the conclusion to my book here. I just spontaneously feel it's really, this is the moment. This is where, and the listeners that are here, and you've been absolutely delightful to have this conversation with. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, please.
So this is the conclusion to A Heart's Landscape. Here in this book, every page is a beginning, one that is yours to create on each visit. In my moments of stillness, I have heard your voices and seen your faces. These words are for you. May you always know that there is something likable, lovable, and worthy within yourself. And I won't read the rest of it, but for years I would end my morning inspiration by saying, from me to you, a hug. So I say, from me to all of you, and especially to you, Judy, a hug. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Susan. That's absolutely the perfect way to bring this interview to a close. And let me just say, it's been a really rejuvenating talk. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And there's so much to ponder when reading each poem. And now you've given us even more to think about as we go through them and enjoy them. So all that to say, thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining Susan and I. And
thank you so much to all of you for spending time with me and A Heart's Landscape. It's been a privilege. Bye.
have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.